Here we are. Hello, my fellow savages. Welcome to the channel. Welcome back. So, yesterday I did my mockumentary about an incident, probably in the future. I don't know how far in the future. 10 years, 15 years, maybe 15 years, probably less. About a massive hurricane striking the Gulf Coast of America. Science fiction, the science is pretty good. Probably some people will doubt it. Of course, people doubt a lot of things. They even doubt actual climate data. So what are you going to do with people like that? People are arguing with thermometers. Fine, whatever. But that's for the fiction part of my science fiction. It's only fiction until it's not fiction anymore, right? So, yeah, that happens all the time. Not going to say any more about that. Go watch the video if you like it. Leave a comment. Maybe I'll do more of those kinds of things in the future. Probably not. It's a lot of work. I say in the video that it's unscripted, and it is. I still have I have one page of notes here about factual things that I didn't want to get facts wrong. And I have the spelling of Crookshank because that's... I don't even know how to spell that. But that was it. I thought about it for a couple of days, and then I just sort of riffed it off. If it seems rough on the edges, it's free. So what are we talking about today? Today, more science fiction. So a few videos back, I should probably put a link in the description, but I'm lazy, so I won't. I did a video about not living on the surface of the earth. And in summary, what it means to not live on the surface of the earth is to either live underground on the earth, or underwater on the earth, or in the sky on the earth. And I thought about mentioning, I didn't mention, basically it skipped my mind, but I was also trying to stay earthbound. Okay. I didn't want to get too out there. And all the things I mentioned, living below ground, living below the surface of the sea or any body of water, and living above the cloud tops, those are all completely doable with today's technology. And people will absolutely, without question, do these things in the future. And the future is probably not even that far off. And why would they do these things? Why would they live below ground? Why would they live below the surface of the water? Why would they live above the cloud tops? Why would they do these things? Because the surface of the earth is going to become uninhabitable. Now, that does not address where's their food going to come from? Where's their water going to come from? There's going to be a lot of technological problems to solve. But the thing that you can't solve, the thing that you can't change, the thing that you're just going to have to run away from and get out ahead of is the fact that the surface of the earth is going to be too hot for human survival. And then I did this video yesterday, which was that the surface of the earth, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot. I talk about global heating because I want you to think about the obvious thing that's happening. It's happening every day. I want you to start thinking in your mind about, no, I didn't really hurt my wrist. I've been doing some digging. I want you to think about what's actually happening in your environment right now, every day. And that's global heating. The planet's getting hot. It's getting hotter every day on average. We've had now 14 months of straight record-breaking months where the month just passed, and they're currently talking about July, June, July, August. Yeah, August data is not out. Obviously, August isn't done. But the July data came out, and once again, for 14 months in a row, the month of July, as well as the June and May and April and all the others, for 14 months, was the hottest on record for that month. 14 in a row. We were in a La Nina phase, which is the cool phase of the ENSO, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. And people were saying, well, these have been the hottest months because we've been in the cool phase of the La Nina. Really? We're in the cool phase, and that's what makes it the hottest months on record. Or do you even listen to yourself when you talk? So now we're going, into, I don't know. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. We were in the El Nino phase, and now we're in the neutral phase, and we're veering into the La Nina phase. I got it backwards. It's easy to do. We're going to the La Nina phase, and in the neutral phase and entering the La Nina phase, we're entering a cold phase, and yet we're still having record-breaking months. So, and these are month to month. We're not comparing, July to December. Okay, we're comparing like to like. So July to July, December to December, April to April, and each one is record breaking compared to that same month in previous years. It's complicated. So yes, it's getting hot, and so I talked about why you would not want at some point why you would not want to be on the surface of the earth, because it's going to be too hot. It's going to be so hot that you can't even breathe the air. It's going to burn your lungs. Okay. As well as everything that the heat brings. Low humidity also burns your lungs. Enhanced levels of pollution. Heat at the surface of the earth cooks the pollutants in the air and creates ground level pollution, because that's where the heat is. The heat is at ground level, where you and I are, right? So the pollution is at ground level, approximately. So that's where you get your high levels of ozone, ground level ozone. You get your high levels of nitrous oxides. You get your high levels of smog, and if the earth is even hotter, then you're going to get even more of that. So the surface of the earth, under a regime of global heating that we are currently in a process funnel for, right? It's just going to go. Where it goes, don't know for sure what the destination is, but it's going wherever it's going to go. The system is going somewhere. It's on an excursion. It's dragging us along with it because we have no other option. And we're going there. We're going there. And you're not going to be able to be for very long on the surface of the earth. And maybe you can wear like a moon suit, like I described, or a chilling suit, or respirators with air modification and a bunch of other stuff like that. So yeah, you can be on the surface of the earth if you're wearing $2,500 worth of personal protective equipment. The entire time you're on the surface. For any reason, you're on the surface. And today, so that's the narrative about why you can't be on the surface of the earth at some point. What, 10 years from now, 15 on the outside, it's going to get hot. And it's going to keep getting hot. But there's going to be a point when people can't be on the surface of the earth for long, exposed to that kind of heat. So I was on my walk day, just got back, and I was watching a video. It's not a channel I subscribe to in YouTube, but I get their videos all the time about Elon Musk's SpaceX preparing to test another launch vehicle to go to space on a reusable rocket. And eventually, of course, he's on record as wanting to go to Mars. He's on record wanting to go to Mars. And he's quite candid in saying why we need to go to Mars. And he says that humanity needs to be a multi-planetary species. Needs to be a multi-planetary species. And I don't think I've ever heard anyone ask him why. Why do we need to be a multi-planetary species? But I can answer that question. Why? Why don't people ask questions? We need to be a multi-planetary species. The billionaire says, "Oh, really? Wow, great! You're the billionaire. I guess that's what we have to be." No. Why do we need to be a multi-planetary species? And the reasons are multiple, I suppose. I'll trot out the obvious ones, or the ones that get some discussion, and then I'll go to the non-obvious one that is of great importance to me, which is global heating. So the obvious ones are, the dinosaurs were wiped out by a meteorite, right? That could happen to us. Meteorite could come, and what would we do about it? We would just sit there and do like the dinosaurs did, look up at the sky. What's that shiny thing, And then we're all dead, just like the dinosaurs ended up all being dead. That could happen, and maybe it's a little less likely now that 60 million years have passed. Maybe meteorites aren't as common as they used to be, but hey, it can happen. And there's a whole asteroid belt out there, and things in the asteroid belt are always banging into each other, and who knows what's going on. Maybe there's black holes passing through the solar system that we don't even see because they're black holes. And so whatever it might take to disturb the asteroid belt, one might come inbound and it might find us here with our, you know, heads up our butts and not able to do anything about it. That's a possibility. It's also possible we could have, you know, another Black Death like we had during the European Middle Ages, Black Death, or some other pandemic. Oh, don't talk about pandemics, you know, it's hysterical and it's a whatever, it's a conspiracy. No, it's not. Okay. There was a Black Death and it killed most of the people in Europe and a good number of the people in the Middle East and the East. Okay. So it was bad news. So we could have another pandemic. It could be really bad. It could find the population of the world really vulnerable in a really bad place. And it could just sweep through the population of the earth. And, you know, that could be bad. And either of those type of events, even if they weren't earth-killing events or, you know, massive fatality events, it could destroy civilization. If enough people got sick, we could just lose civilization and not know how to bootstrap it, not know how to restart it. I learned a term from Sabina Hossenfelder, my favorite YouTube physics influencer. Definitely check her out, Sabina, Sabine, Hossenfelder. And she was commenting on climate change, and she was commenting on tipping points, and she dredged something up that I guess I'd heard before, but hearing it from her reminded me again. This thing it's called path dependency. And civilization is an example of path dependency. How did we get our civilization? It was a whole bunch of steps, right? It was the Greeks, and it was the Romans, and it was the Crusades, and it was a whole bunch of things. It was, and whatever the Chinese were doing with paper and gunpowder, and whatever the Aborigines were doing, whatever the American Indians were doing. It's this path dependency that a bunch of things had to happen in a particular way, in a particular order, that did happen that way, that gave us the version of human civilization we have today. And it was all those old civilizations and all their discoveries and all of our recent discoveries and the ready availability of fossil fuels, right? Just right on the surface. And you didn't have to even dig them up. We're talking about digging up fossil fuels. Well, back in the day, you didn't even dig them up. You just kind of picked them up off the ground. Whoa, this is a fossil fuel. You burn it, throw it in the oven and burn it. So there's a path dependency that certain things happened for us. The planet was covered with trees. The planet was, you know, pristine. The planet was, you know, just coming out of an ice age. All these glaciers were melting. There was all this water available. All these path dependencies that got us to where we are now. Where are we now? Well, civilization, right? So if something were to come along and disrupt this act, this thing, could we actually reboot it? And I made that point several times. If we lose this civilization because of path dependency, we may not be able to recreate this. Oh, well, we can create something different. Well, that's fine. But would we have penicillin in a different civilization? Well, we could. But will we? We might if we deliberately make sure that we do. But that's something we have to decide to do. And are we going to do that? So far, we're not doing that. So what if we run out of time and we're still not doing it? And we don't do anything about ensuring that there's an internet or ensuring that there's, you know, encyclopedic knowledge like Wikipedia and encyclopedias and books in general, right? If we don't deliberately make sure that these things go forward with us as we try to go forward, then they may not go forward. And we may have to start with something different. We may have to start from scratch. And what kind of civilization will we get after that? Well, we won't have fossil fuels because we won't have technology to dig them up. We won't have, you know, Wikipedia because we don't have computer servers. Will we ever make computer servers again? Will we ever reinvent the internet? Will we ever remember how those things happen? And what about the path dependencies that gave us all the electronics and all the communications technologies and all the compression algorithms and all the encryption and all the everything else? What if we don't have those things? What if we've forgotten those things? And are we going to ever have the internet again? I don't know. There's a path dependency that got us there. I mean, I was there, right? So I know how we got the internet. I was there. I helped create some of that. I won't be there in the future. Will there be someone like me in the future to make sure that happens again? Who the hell knows? So, to the point about why people are going to Mars. I don't know why Elon Musk, the billionaire, is thinking about going to Mars. He's quite emphatic that humans need to be on Mars. But he's a smart guy. He has personality disorders and, narcissistic disorder and autism or spectrum autism or whatever. But you can say the same thing about me. So here we go. Elon and I are probably on the same page for a few things, where few means many. He's one with the billions of dollars. I'm not. But nevertheless, we are probably on the same page with regards to Mars. Here's why. Global heating. Not meteorites, not pandemics, not global war, not World War III, not nuclear weapons, although all those things could happen. I'm sure he's thought of that too. But because of global heating. We might have a nuclear war. We might have a pandemic. We might have a meteor strike. We might have an alien invasion, right? We will have global heating. Now, he may not even believe that. The big billionaire, brain the size of a planet, the whole thing. He may think that global heating is a hoax, but it isn't. It's not. And it's not a conspiracy. It's a thing. Data, thermometers, right? 14 straight months of record temperatures. Well, it's cyclical. Well, it's this, it's that. No, it's not. It's the sunspots. No, it isn't. It's not any of those things. Okay? It's global heating. It's us. We did it. We burned the fossil fuels. We enhanced the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect heats the planet. By enhancing the greenhouse effect, we enhance the heating. By not stopping doing any of those things, we now have essentially a trajectory into a hot, heated planet, hothouse Earth, where the surface of the Earth is probably too hot to breathe. And then, of course, there will be violence. What would you expect? As people start to lose access to food and water and habitat and start leaving one part of the planet, basically the equatorial part, and traveling into other parts of the planet, trying to find water, food, shelter, right? You're going to have violence. You're going to have warfare. People are going to show up at your border and say, yeah, we're coming in. You're going to say, no, you're not. And they're going to say, yes, we are. And there you go. Now you're at war. So how do you avoid all that? Well, you could go to Mars. Now, the thing about going to Mars is it's a highly technical, highly advanced activity. So they are going to have technology on Mars that they're going to have to bootstrap to have the things that we have here on Earth easily. So they're going to have factories to make electronic equipment because it's so expensive to send equipment to Mars. They're going to have their own ways, micro manufacturing, 3D printing, all that kind of stuff, to manufacture what they need on Mars, what we call in situ, meaning in that situation. They're going to have surface mining on Mars to get the minerals that they need in situ to build the things they need on Mars, so they don't have to ship them out. They're going to have a small pharmaceutical industry. They're going to have to create their pharmaceuticals on site, in situ, as needed. And they're going to have little reactor vessels for making all kinds of antibiotics. And they may even do gene splicing and have yeast that cranks out penicillin. They're going to have to figure that out. And they're going to figure it out because they're on Mars, right? We don't have to figure that stuff out here because you want penicillin, you want another antibiotic, you want your blood pressure meds. You go to the druggist, right? And they have them on the shelf and they put them in the jar and they sell them to you or they hand them to you or they do whatever, right? It's easy for you. But if you're on Mars, you can't go to the chemist. You can't go to the druggist. So they're going to figure that out, right? They're going to figure that out. So they're going to figure that out. They're going to have medications. They're going to have probably an entire copy of the internet, the whole thing. Oh, let alone Wikipedia. I could copy Wikipedia right here on my computer. They're going to have the whole internet on Mars. Now, it's going to be constantly out of date, but doesn't matter to them. They want the snapshot of how everything happened. They want all the code. They want all the Python, all the JavaScript, all the C code. They want it all. They're going to have everything. They're going to have all the repositories. They're going to have everything they need to replicate what we have here so that they have it on Mars. So it's right there. They have their own servers, their own server farms, their own cloud, their own everything. And they're going to have solar panels, and they're going to have nuclear reactors. They're going to have everything they need on Mars because they're on Mars. And once they're on Mars, yeah, let's give them 10, 15 years to figure all this out. And watch what happens. They're on Mars. They've got a lot of stuff figured out. About that time, the surface of the Earth becomes uninhabitable. And so when I was mentioning, you can't be on the surface of the Earth, you're going to have to be somewhere else. And I said, you could be below the surface of the Earth. You could just dig down, right? Put your house underground so you could avoid the heat and the rain and the hail and the floods and the winds and everything else, right? See my prior video. You could be under the surface of the water. The water stabilizes temperatures and, of course, wind and everything else. You could be above the clouds in floating cities, right? Dirigibles and other lighter than aircraft. Easily done. Easily done. Sit down with me. We'll have a beer. We'll figure that out. I could completely design that thing right down to the materials and the plans to build it. Because it's not that hard. Because we've been doing this. We've been doing these things for certainly decades, if not a century. So, but a fourth option is you're not on the surface of Earth because you're not on Earth. You're not on Earth. So things on Earth could get really ugly. My prior video was kind of priming the pump, the mockumentary, okay? The docudrama, whatever you want to call it, for how things could go on Earth. That prior video was science fiction. And as I say at the beginning and at the end, it's only science fiction until it's no longer fiction. You follow? Because the science is real enough. And everything I said about hypercanes, you can find it in Wikipedia. You can discuss it with physicists, and they'll tell you what I was hearing 30 years ago. Oh, well, that won't happen. And 30 years ago, they were saying the same thing about global heating. That's hundreds, maybe thousands of years away. It is to laugh. If you're worried about that, worry about whatever you want to, Sparky. The rest of us are going to go forward. We got progress to deal with here. We got some progress, okay? And you want to worry about global heating? Fine, go ahead. 30 years further down the road, we're losing our minds over global heating. So it's only science fiction until it's not fiction anymore. Am I getting through? Am I getting through? Hypercanes are a thing. I am increasingly convinced, just kind of looking at things on the ground, that is our future. Before the sea level rises and floods, all these important cities, and you're looking at them through the bottom of a glass bottom boat. Oh, look, there's Florida. Oh, look, there's Washington, D.C. Before we're doing that, before we're glass bottom boating tourists, for the Lincoln Memorial, before all that happens, you're going to have heat. You're going to have heat. Yes, it's going to melt the ice, but before it melts the ice and floods the world, you're going to have heat that's so hot, you're not going to be able to breathe the air without personal protective equipment. That sounds like science fiction. It's only science fiction until it's not fiction, because it is science. It's the science of global heating and climate change. That's where we're headed, folks. That's where we're going. We're going there. And about the same time, watch what happens. About the same time that we get surface temperatures that are too hot to survive without PPE on the surface, we will coincidentally, look what just happened, coincidentally have conditions that will stimulate a level of cyclone, hurricanes, typhoons, or cyclones that will defy comprehension. As I mentioned in yesterday's video, there is a effort right now to add a sixth category, category 6, to the Saffir-Simpson hurricane category list. Right now, category 5 is 5 plus, which is really convenient because that means they don't have to really let you know that things are kind of spinning out of control. If they start talking about adding a category 6 at this late date, people are going to say, why are we adding a category 6? Why would you even do that? Well, because hurricanes are becoming so severe that we can't talk about them correctly, scientifically, by just calling them category 5 plus. Why would the hurricanes be getting bad? Oh, well, global heating. But I heard that was a hoax. Oh, no, that's not a hoax. And we're adding category 6 now. Really? Are you sure you can just do that? Oh, yeah, this is science. That sounds like science fiction to me. No, maybe it was science fiction 30 years ago, but now it's not fiction anymore. So it's just science. Category 6. And where do you stop? If we're going to add category 6, and we know why we're doing that because of global heating, well, why stop there? Why drag this out? Why drag this out? Why don't we just go ahead and define a whole bunch of others? Why we're going through this stupid process that takes what now, like 10 years now? Right? Why don't we just kind of jump over it and just go for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? It's like, well, that's ridiculous. Category 10, that would be like what? 500 miles an hour? Yeah, we're calling it a hypercane now, but let's just call it a category 10 hurricane. So that we're ready. So that we're ready for when it happens. Hurricanes spin up. I'm using freedom units here. Hurricanes spin up at about over water. That's about 80 degrees Fahrenheit. That's really warm for ocean water. And yet we have warm water like that in lots of places. So we're getting lots of hurricanes. We've gotten hurricanes, that generate off of Africa and cross the Caribbean and end up hitting the Gulf states. We've been having those for centuries, right? So there's obviously 80-degree water out there somewhere for these things to happen. So recently, there was 100-degree water off of Florida. It was a small patch, but it made the news. People were following that. 100 degrees, 100-degree water. That will cook you. That's unsafe to even be in. You shouldn't be in the water. Don't be in the water, right? Do I have to say this again? It's unsafe. It will cook you. It will give you a stroke. It's not going to be fun. Don't be in the water. It's 100 degrees, right? It'll cook you, put you in the hospital, kill you. Don't be in the water. So, but it was just a small patch of water. It was only temporary and blah, 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 blah. And, what are we supposed to say about that? Well, that's global heating. So let's see. As the planet gets hotter, these 100-degree patches of water will become more common. And pretty soon we'll be generating hurricanes, not over 80-degree water or 85 or 90 or 95, but 100. And if we're going to get 100-degree water, what's going to stop us from getting 110-degree water? Well, that just doesn't seem right. Okay, it's science fiction, but it's only science fiction so long as it's fiction. No one thought we'd ever have 100-degree water, but we do. So there you go. Data, right? Reality on the ground. But it was temporary. Doesn't matter. It happened. Next time it happens, it won't be temporary. It'll be like a thing. And just for the record, hypercanes are theoretically thought to be spawned at water temperatures over 120 degrees. Okay, that's a long ways from 80, but it's not a long ways from 100. Am I right? Not a long ways from 100. And, we're knocking on the door of 100. And pretty soon we'll be at 100, and people will say, oh, 100. We've always had 100-degree water over here. And the Gulf Stream has always been 105 degrees. Everyone knows that. Ha, ha, ha. It is too loud. You think that's a problem. You're just not paying attention. Well, I think the one who's not paying attention is somebody who says it's always been like that. Go look up some data, Sparky, genius. Go find yourself some data. Look at some data, please, and tell me that it's always been like that. Because it hasn't. And now it is, or it will be in the future. And about the time that global heating, is messing around with the surface of the earth so much that people really can't be out there, except that they're taking a certain risk, or that they're going from one air-conditioned reality to another. And heaven forbid that you ever trip and fall in the parking lot. You'll end up with burns on your body that take you to the emergency room in an air-conditioned ambulance, I suppose. An air-conditioned emergency room, but still, don't fall in the parking lot. Don't hit the asphalt. It's 200 degrees. You can fry an egg on it, and you can fry a human. This is already a problem, by the way. People are already getting fried, their body fried, scars for life by falling down in the parking lot. About the time that becomes real, real common, the oceans will be doing something that no one's paying any attention to. They're getting hot. Maybe not everywhere, but it doesn't have to be everywhere. It can be in the Gulf of Mexico. It just be in the Gulf of Mexico. 100-degree water, maybe 105, maybe 110. Who's really noticing? Who really cares? It's out there in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. What's out there? Fish, right? Jellyfish even? Who cares? And one of these days, there's going to be a tropical depression or a tropical storm that, just like in my video yesterday, crosses Cuba. No big deal. It rained, and then it crossed into the Gulf of Mexico and it hit 100-degree water. Not very much, just some. Or maybe hit 105-degree water. Doesn't have to be a lot, just some. And it just has to hit it. It just has to be in the right place, right in the path, and it goes over that and it spins up. And you get maybe a small baby, little tiny chibi hypercane that then comes ashore and just kills everyone, everything, every structure, knocks down every bridge, blows every car into a pile of cars, demolishes everything. It's a hypercane, right? It's 800 miles across. It's 1,000 miles across. The winds are 250, 300, 350, 400 miles an hour, right? And it's like, wow, where did this come from? Well, sit down and I'll explain to you where that came from. Now, this will sound like science fiction. And, 10, 20 years ago, it was science fiction. But now it's not, because it's not fiction anymore. So sit your ass down and let me explain to you why that happened. And that's what I was trying to do in my video yesterday. Wake you up to your actual situation. So Elon Musk is going to Mars because the planet Earth is going to be uninhabitable. And the surface is going to be too hot to be on and to breathe and to work in. And it's going to be too violent. With these constant, frequent, at least anyway, frequent, massive hurricanes, massive tropical storms, and massive hypercanes. It's coming. It's coming. I can sense it. It's on the way. And we are going to endure basically a hellscape. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be awful. And where do you want to be when all this is going on? Well, you don't want to be on Earth. You want to be on Mars. You want to be on Mars, where you can bring out your telescope and look at Earth and, wow, look at that big hurricane on Earth. Wow, that's amazing. Have you heard anything from Earth about the hurricane? No, I think the internet is down. Oh, really? That sounds grim. You haven't heard a thing from Earth in a couple of days. Look at that hurricane. Wow, it must be 2,000 miles across. Glad I'm not on Earth. Wow, look at this through the telescope. Yeah, I don't want to be any closer than where I am right now to that shit show. They'll be watching us from Mars. Dealing with Mars, no atmosphere, freezing cold, solar radiation hazards, gamma rays, chloramines in the soil, the whole thing. On Mars, fighting to survive, watching us through a big telescope as we are eradicated, by and large. And our civilization is put through a blender, pretty much. And we lose our internet, and we lose our crops, and we lose our habitable zones, and we lose our will to live, right? As the violence and the heat and the misery and the refugees and the diseases and the crop failures just scour the planet like the four horsemen of the apocalypse, riding one direction, then riding back the other direction. That was so fun. Let's do it again, right? Watching us from a telescope from Mars. Wow, look at that. Those people. I wonder how they're doing. I haven't heard from them in about a year or two now. Wow, that's amazing. Living on Mars. Living on Mars. Not on the surface of the Earth. And not below the surface of the Earth. And not in the water, below the surface of the water. And not in the clouds. Not in the sky above the clouds. I mean, maybe. Mars seems so impossible. Low gravity and radiation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, it does seem impossible, doesn't it? Mars seems awful. But you know what Mars? Thanks for the comment. You know what Mars doesn't have that Earth has in abundance? Two things. Both of which are going to be leveraged to our absolute ruin. Mars doesn't have an atmosphere. You can't have hypercanes on Mars. You can have winds, by the way. And the winds can be really powerful, but they're thin. Also doesn't have global heating. It was like, oh, there's global heating on Mars, just like there is on Earth. I don't think so. They're not going to have nearly the shit show we've got going on. They're going to have a different set of problems. Radiation, food supply, water supply, everything. Oh, by the way, they just recently, NASA just came out and said, oh, there's abundant water on Mars if you dig down enough. Wow, you could say the same thing about Saudi Arabia, right? Northern Africa. You dig down enough, there's water down there. So that works here, that works on Mars. And if they have abundant water, 50, 100, 200 feet below the surface, they're gold. They are solid gold. And you build up domes and enrich the soil, right? We had that movie, The Martian. I don't know how scientifically accurate it is. It's, once again, science fiction, only fiction until it's not, right? So what they could do, they could build domes, they could fix the soil, they could grow crops, they could have solar panels, they have sunlight. I mean, the sun is up there. It's the same solar system as we're in right here on Earth, right? They're gonna have sunlight, it's gonna be fine. And they're gonna fight the dust, and they're gonna fight the perchlorates, and they're gonna fight the everything else. But they don't have to fight global heating because they ain't got none. In fact, they'd like to have some. Who knows what they're going to do about that? Maybe they'll do something. Maybe they won't. Maybe they just live in domes and they pressurize their domes and they have airlocks in case the dome fails and they figure it all out. But they're on Mars and they've got a copy of the internet and they've got a copy of the server technology and they've got a copy of cell phones and they have 3D printing figured out and they have reactor vessels to make all their antibiotics. And we don't have those things because we didn't need those things. So we never figured them out. But they figured it out to go to Mars and they have them on Mars and we don't have them here. So we don't have anything. Because we never bothered taking this shit seriously. And they had to take it seriously because Mars and down here on Earth, we took nothing seriously. We just lived our lives. We just, went along. We don't have problems with gamma rays. We don't have problems with radiation. We don't have problems with perchlorates in the soil. Everything is abundant. You want penicillin? You go to Target. You go to the chemist. You go to the, drugstore. So we don't have to have solutions. But when climate hits and when the global heating hits and you can't actually be on the surface to go to the chemist to get your penicillin, then where's your penicillin going to come from? You're not going to have any, and you'll die from a scratch, from an infection and a scratch. You'll get a scratch and you'll get an infection, and then you have to cut your arm off. And they don't cut your arm off soon enough, it gets gangrenous. Then your whole system shuts down because you couldn't get penicillin. Because you couldn't get to the surface and there was nowhere to go where you could get penicillin because no one's making penicillin anymore because the big pharma and the factories for making penicillin were on the surface of the earth in India. And you don't live in India. So what are you going to do? I don't know. Figure it out. You're living on Earth. But if they're going to live on Mars, they're going to have to figure that out in advance. They got to figure that out in advance. They are absolutely going to figure that out in advance because they have to. And we won't because we don't. We never will. We'll never figure it out. And so, ironically enough, if you want to survive global heating, where Earth becomes uninhabitable on the surface, where there is so much violence on the surface, and not just World War III, and not just mechanized warfare, and not just refugee hordes, but hypercanes or other forms of weather that are just so destructive, driven by the heat accumulating on Earth. If you don't want to deal with all that, it's probably the only place where you don't actually have to deal with that. You have to deal with other things, but you don't have to deal with that thing exactly. You go to Mars. And they had to figure out civilization in miniature from scratch. And they'll have it all. They'll have it all on Mars. Everything. Everything that you could go to Target or the CVS or the Walgreens or anywhere else you want to go. Any chemist, any pharmacist, any physical therapist, any emergency room, any university, any classroom, any book on any shelf, anything you'd want that was available on Earth, basically with just walking down the street or a bicycle ride, right? They will have to have that, and they will have to figure that out. And maybe, the pharmacist is the next dome over. And maybe you have to put in your request for a particular pharmaceutical that your doctor prescribed for you. And your doctor could be an AI, right? They don't actually need a person to be your doctor. It could be an artificial intelligence. A lot of the stuff that they would have on Mars would simply be artificial intelligence because humans are kind of expensive to maintain, right? Food, clothing, shelter, all that. So they're going to have a lot of artificial intelligence. They're going to have a lot of stuff that's simply automated. So you're going to get the artificial intelligence. It looks in your eye and it looks up your nose and it looks in your mouth and in your ear and it says, okay, here's what your problem is, and you need this, and puts in the prescription for you. And 2 days later, you go and you pick it up, and it was made to order for you in a yeast vat, in a reactor vessel. They had everything because they're on Mars. And I don't know that Elon Musk is thinking all this. He wants to go to Mars. He wants to get away from what? Progressives, poor people, black people. I don't know what he's getting away from, but what he's going into is what I just described, because he has to make all that work. And when he makes all that work and humans become a multiplanetary species, then global heating and climate change and everything that's going to murder us here on Earth is not going to be his problem on Mars. He'll have problems on Mars, but not our problems here on Earth. And from Mars, they will watch us grind ourselves to cornmeal, just grind ourselves down to nothing, fighting over the last bottle of penicillin. They'll go to Mars and they'll watch us grinding ourselves down to bone meal. And they have everything they need because that was part of the requirement to live on Mars. You're going to have everything you need. And they could just tough it out. They could tough it out. In theory, humans could be on Mars for 1,000 years until things settle down on Earth. Earth could be repopulated by Martians. The Martian invasion that science fiction is so keen about, right? The Martian invasion, but there's not going to be, LGMs. It's going to be humans, genetically DNA humans who went to Mars, toughed it out, survived. And when the Earth finally settles down in 1,000 years or 4,000 years, whatever it takes, they come back. They've got their rockets. They figured out how to come to Earth. They figure out where they want to go. They have their landing sites all figured out. And they fuel their rockets and they come to Earth. Because they could have done that anytime they wanted to. But they didn't want to. Because everything here was in the shitter. So they just stayed where they were. But they always had the capability of coming back if they wanted to. Mars. A second home for humanity. In biology and in ecology, we call this a refugia. Refugia. I've talked a little bit about extinction, and I've also talked about extirpation, which is local extinction. The way a species avoids actual extinction is it finds a place where it can take refuge. And you may think that the species is extinct everywhere on the planet. But what you haven't figured out is that there's a place where they continue to exist. So they're not actually extinct. You just don't know where they are. And that's called a refugia. So then when conditions are better for that species, when their habitat is more available or less contested, then they can expand back out and they can repopulate the planet from their refugia, from their refuge. So Mars could become a refugia, a biological refuge, a biological hiding place for humans, so that humans could return to the Earth from that safe spot. Not that safe. They're going to have to make it safe. It's going to be a struggle. But hey, technology, right? We can figure it out. And losses. Maybe the losses are acceptable. They'll have to take their losses. They'll have to figure out how to survive. They'll have to have a certain amount of human diversity. They'll have to have a lot of DNA. Black people, white people, orange people, yellow people, green people, right? Purple people, all the people on Mars. Then from their refugia, after they're extinct on Earth, possibility, or even if they're just depleted on Earth, and there's nothing but hunter-gatherers and, primitive societies. I almost use the word civilizations, primitive societies, primitive tribes, okay? Then they could come back. And what would that look like to those primitive tribes who are just, hunter and gathering, and they see the remains of the big skyscrapers and the football stadiums, and wonder where this stuff come from and who built this. It must have been the gods, right? Then humans come back from Mars. What about that? I mean, they're clean shaven. They got nice spacesuits on. They probably look a little different. It's been a couple thousand years, right? Genetic drift. They probably look a little different. And they come back to Earth, and they're wandering around looking at all the people. And what do the people look like on Earth after people have been gone for 4,000 years? Oh, they got beards. Their eyes are misshapen, right? Their teeth that are like this. And who knows? It's been a hard life for these people. They probably don't live past 35 most of the time, just like back in the day. And, they're running around eating whatever's able to eat. What? By then, it'll be what's left. What's left? What's evolved? Herds of giant rats, right? Giant kangaroos that escaped from Australia. I don't know. What are they going to be eating? Maybe all mammalian life that isn't human evolved out of the only mammals that survived global heating, and that's rats. And they're all derivative of rats. And there's a whole rat tree of life. And there's rat elephants and rat cows and rat giraffes. It's all rats, right? But they've refilled the earth from the only thing that survived to refill the earth, which is with a bunch of rats. So we come back from Mars and we find a planet that's filled out with, a certain number of humans, a couple thousand, maybe a million humans, maybe not even that, maybe 50,000 humans, and a whole set of ecosystems, herd animals, predators, things that live in the water based on rats. Big ones, little ones, flying rats. It's only science fiction until it's not fiction. You got to wrap your head around this. It's only science fiction until it's not fiction anymore. So Elon Musk is going to Mars. He's got my blessings. It's probably dumb. It'll probably never work out. But hey, why not? Maybe that'll be the only place in the solar system, therefore, in the entire universe, where humans are able to survive global heating. I don't think that's true. I think that, by innovating here on Earth, we can probably reproduce a lot of the capabilities that end up going to Mars here on Earth. We can even create them first. And people will live underground, and maybe even fairly substantial underground developments. People will live in the sea, essentially submarines, and they may, have ways to dock together, and they may have whole underground villages, undersea villages. And once again, even the most exciting part, possibly, they could maybe live above the cloud tops, where again, they got their telescopes and are looking down at us on the ground. They're not seeing us on the ground because the surface is uninhabitable, but they see, some of us in spacesuits walking around on the surface. Hey, look at those people. They're still down there. There's still humans on the surface. Well, that's good news. Maybe we should go down there and visit those people, see what they're up to. We should invite them up here into the trees. Into the clouds, so they can see what we're up to. Maybe, why not? It's science fiction for now. Anyway, I'm done. I had fun yesterday with that video, with my mockumentary. It's long, but drama. So I'm not that great at drama. I'm not a actor, but I am a science fiction writer. So I think the science is pretty good. The fiction is probably pretty good. And today's video was a tie-in with that. Yes, we're going there, folks. We are going there. We are going there on greased skids. Man, you better get ready. Boy, howdy. It's a coming.